There's a couple of things I'd like to investigate here first. The first is I'd like to return to something that you and I talked about that we wandered around a fair bit in our previous conversations. You had, partly because you were concerned about the distinction between good and evil, and don't let me put words into your mouth, you were hoping to find a objective basis for morality, a way of grounding morality in the objective world. And I have a thought about that that's relevant to our current conversation. So tell me if you accept this proposition. Part of the pathology of Twitter is that it operates by game rules that not only don't apply in the real world, but that when exported to the real world, pathologize it. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that a lot.
Okay. Right. Okay. So here's a way of I think bridging a gap between the way you've been thinking about the world from the moral perspective and the way I've been thinking about it. So, I've always been, I've understood that you had a very deep concern about moral judgment, and that your attempt to provide a scaffolding of objectivity for morality was grounded in that even deeper concern. And I thought that I could understand why you did that. And I didn't agree with the conclusions that you'd drawn, but I agreed with the overall enterprise. And it struck me recently, and I think we've already obliquely made reference to it in our conversation, that there's another way of conceptualizing this relationship between morality and objective fact, and that might be more fruitful to look into the realm of something like, well, it's like theory of iterability, and generalizability. It's maybe a variant of something like game theory. Like, imagine that. So let me give you an example, Sam, and it's a pretty famous example. Those trading games where behavioral economists sit people down and say, two people, they say, I'll give you $100, you have to make an offer to the, okay.
Yeah.
So the finding across culturally is that people generally approximate a 50% split, right?
Yeah. And they're highly, they're not game theoretic with respect to unfair trades. Like they don't want to accept unfair trades even when it would just narrowly be to their advantage to accept them.
Exactly. Okay. And that's true even if they're poor. So if you put a poor person in a situation where they have to accept an unfair trade that would be to their immediate economic benefit, they seem even less likely to accept it. Now, I think the right way to construe that is that if you and I engage in an economic trade, we're doing two things at the same time. The first is what the classical economists would say is we're trying to maximize our gain, let's say. But the problem with that notion is that we aren't playing one game. Or while we're playing one game, we're also setting ourselves up to play a very large and unpredictable sequence of games. Those are happening at the same time. And so we don't want to just optimize for gain in the single game. We want to optimize our status as players in a large series of unpredictable games. And so we want to put ourselves forward as fair players so that people line up to play other games with us. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then imagine that the hallmark of morality is something like generalizable iterability across contexts, right? Because this would allow for, and so you could think about a truly moral system is the most playable game, and an immoral system augurs in. And when we've seen, we're talking about this to some degree with regard to X, because our proposition is that fundamentally, because it's optimizing for short-term attention grip, and it benefits the psychopaths and the short-term gain accruers, the parasites, and perhaps the predators, that it's fundamentally a non-playable game, and that if its consequences generalize outside the world of X, that it pathologizes the environment. And the reason for that is it's not optimally iterable. And so the pattern of morality that would be grounded in the objective world isn't in the world of objective fact. It's in the world of optimized iterability across people and contexts.
If you've listened to us for a while, you know our stance on fluoridation. Today, more than 70% of the U.S. population has fluoride added to their water sources. That's a violation of personal rights, plain and simple. On the Jordan Peterson podcast, you've heard the government has no problem with mass medicating their populations without consent. On this show, we refuse to drink compromised water, and that's why we use Cove Pure. Cove Pure is a countertop reverse osmosis system that filters your water in 4 stages, stripping away fluoride, contaminants, and the arrogance of bureaucrats who think they know what's best for you. Their ClearWave reverse osmosis technology is lab certified to remove up to 99% of impurities, leaving you with only the purest water possible. And unlike the government, Cove Pure lets you have the water exactly the way you want it. It's the simple touchscreen that lets you choose the exact amount or temperature that you want. Hot, cold, warm. Cove Pure does it all with an instant tap of a button. Not only does it look amazing, the best part is there's no need to drill in pipes or call in the plumber. You just set Cove Pure right on your countertop, fill it up with water, and plug it in. Your health shouldn't come at the cost of your autonomy. Purify your water today with the same system that Jordan uses. And because we partnered with Cove Pure, you'll get $200 off if you use our link in our description box. CovePure.com/Jordan.
Well, I would just say that there's some set of objective facts that subsumes that picture, right? I mean, the world is the way it is. The social world of social primates such as ourselves is the way it is. It admits of certain possibilities, and certain other things are impossible given the kinds of minds we have. Our minds could change in all kinds of ways. They could change by being integrated with technology. They could change by genetically being manipulated at some point in the future. There's this landscape of possible experience that the right sort of minds could navigate. And we're someplace on that landscape, and we're trying to find our way. And so I view morality as at bottom, a navigation problem, right? And it's got this iterative quality that you describe. The question is, it's always, where can we go from here? Where should we go from here? Where should we go from here, given all the possible places we might go from here, both individually and collectively?
Okay, well, the reason that I got obsessed with stories to begin with, Sam, was because I realized 30 years ago that a story was a description of a navigation strategy. That's what a story is. And so then the question is, okay, let's see if we can formalize this a bit more. The story has to, let's say an optimized story has to iterate and improve. So for example, if you construe your marriage properly, it exists stably, but that's not as good as it could get. It could exist stably and improve as it iterates. And then you can imagine that there's a small world of games that are playable in the actual natural and social world that improve as they iterate. And those games, pointers to that game, those games are moral pointers. And I think that that's what the core of the religious enterprise dives into and elaborates upon. I think that's what makes it the religious enterprise, is that it deeply assesses. So, if imagine that your proposition, the proposition you laid out is accurate, is that the fundamental concern is navigation. How do we get from point A to point B? Well, a story, you can think about this and tell me what you think, but I believe that a story is a description of a navigation strategy. If you go see a movie, you infer the aim of the protagonist and you adopt his perceptual frame and his emotional perspective. That's how perception works. And then you can imagine that there are depths of games. Some are shallow, and short-term games that maximize for short-term gain and to hell with everything else are shallow. And games that are sophisticated can be played in many situations with many players They take the future into account and they improve as you play them. And there's a hierarchy of value in consequence of that is obliquely associated with the world of fact, because it has to operate in the world of fact, but that isn't fundamentally derived from like data that's directly associated with the facts.
Well, not operationally, but potentially so. Just not in fact. It's just that's just not. I'm never claiming when I say that there are objective truths to all of these questions, that those objective truths will be delivered by some guy holding a clipboard wearing a white lab coat. But there are things we just know to be true, and it would take a lot of explaining to get to the bottom of how we know them to be true. But I mean, they're very simple claims. We know that life in the best and most refined and most ethically positive sum developed world context, right? You and me and our most conscientious friends at the nicest resort after having done a great day's work, we're enjoying a great meal and talking and creatively and positively about how to improve the world. We know that's a better game than trying to find some child soldiers to torture the neighbors in some malarial hellhole, in sub-Saharan Africa, and so that we can extract some heavy metals, the extraction of which is polluting the environment and causing the life expectation to be 30 years lower than it is in where we live, right? I mean, so like they're fundamentally discordant human projects that are available to some very lucky people and unavailable to others, and luck is by no means evenly distributed in this world. So there are better and worse games, right? By any measure of better. You want to, ethically better, or artistically better, entrepreneurially better, economically better. It's just better with respect to the health outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. So we're all trying to play the best game we can be a part of. We're all trying. I mean, some people. I take that back. Many of us are. We're all trying to play the best game we can think of as best. But one of the consequences of my argument is that it's possible to be wrong. It's possible to actually have false beliefs about what is in fact better or worse. You can be confused.
Well, I also think you're
insufficient.
You're insufficiently pessimistic too, Sam. I think because I don't think everyone is trying to play the best possible game. I think that there are truly negative games where
I think the evidence, people are being rewarded in some way, like the sadist whose favorite game is to cause the suffering in others and enjoy that suffering. The fact that he enjoys their suffering, right? That's a problem with him, right? He's a neurological monster of a sort, and he's confined to be in the sort of mind that finds that very low-level game more rewarding than the game I just advertised at the resort with us being creative and productive and positive sum.
Yeah, well, that's the man who wants to rule over hell, Sam.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not saying
because
that
he
exist.
thinks. Fine.
But my point is that we're obviously living in a realm where there are better and worse outcomes by any definition of better and worse that makes sense.
Even from within the confines of the games that you're describing.
Yeah.
Right. Because one of the ways of deciding that a game is counterproductive is that if you play it, it doesn't produce the result that it intends. Right. So that's another kind of universal hallmark of moral judgment. Like if you're aiming at something and your strategy doesn't get you there, either your strategy is wrong or your aim is off by your own definition. Right? There's no relativizing your way out of that. And then we could say, well, there's a hierarchy of games that that expand and improve as you play them. And there's a hierarchy of games that degenerate as you play them, even by your own standards of degeneration.
Yeah, and the games, the more refined games actually refine you as a player. I mean, you get changed by the game you play, to your advantage or to your disadvantage, and it makes you more or less capable of playing any specific game. So I mean, this is what learning, this is what education is. This is what skill learning is. This is what interpersonal skill learning amounts to. This is what the difference between having good relationships versus bad relationships, being in a good culture where its institutions incentivize you to be effortlessly be the best possible version of yourself, as opposed to you having to be some kind of moral hero just to be not a psychopath. I mean, this is what's so important about incentives and about contexts like Twitter that incentivize the wrong things. What we want, I mean, we don't want to have to take on the burden of rebooting civilization ourselves based on our own native moral intuitions every single hour of every single day.
That's for sure, Sam. Yeah, that's for sure.
We need systems that make it easy for strangers to collaborate effortlessly in high trust environments. Right. I mean, this is we need to offload all of our moral wisdom into institutions and to systems of incentives such that you would have to be a very bad person indeed not to see the wisdom of being a peaceful, honest collaborator with the next person you meet. Right. In this, given the nature of the system, whereas, I mean, if you look, I mean, just to sharpen this up, because that can sound very abstract, if you take an actually normal, decent person who just wants to be good and have positive some relationships with everyone he meets, you put that person in a maximum security prison in the United States, that person will be highly incentivized to join a gang that has the requisite color of his skin, right, and be essentially a monster, because that's the only way to survive in that context, right? To not join a gang, to not join a racist gang, is to be the victim of everyone, right? So what you have in a maximum security prison is a system of terrible incentives where you have to be some kind of self-sacrificing saint to opt out of ramifying this awful system of incentives further. We want the opposite of that in situations that we control and in institutions that we build. And what the thing that's so disturbing to me about this contrarian moment is that so many people have gotten the message, and this is really most explicit since COVID. They've gotten the message that we don't need institutions. We don't want institutions. We just need to burn it all down. And we're just going to navigate by Substack newsletter and podcast. And that's just not going to work, right? We can't be all contrarian all the time. We need institutional knowledge.
Intermediary institutions.
That work. Yeah. So whether we have to build new ones or perform exorcisms on our old ones, that might be a different answer depending on the case. But there's no question we need institutions that are better than most individuals, and that make most individuals live up to norms that they themselves didn't invent, and would under another system of incentives would struggle to emulate.